We want to bring in some more voices now. It's important to get a variety for you, right? So we're happy to join former Republican Representative Doug Osee, who ran in the recall election against Gavin Newsom, and Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris.
Thank you both for being with us. Jonathan, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing so far tonight as far as the balance of power in Congress? And if we do see Republicans take control of the House, how will that impact the Democratic agenda here locally and how they work to get things done here in California?
I was reading an article earlier today. I wish I could remember which publication it was, and they were talking about how if the Democrats lose power in the House, that it'll kind of diminish a bit of California's influence nationwide. I don't know that I agree with that, though. They were talking about it diminishing Nancy Pelosi's power, but also I think Gavin Newsom is a remarkably popular figure, and as you guys have talked about throughout tonight, he's been taking a much more national tone with some of his appearances and some of the commentary. I forget who was pointing out that tonight he was standing in front of a big national issue that won tonight in California. So I don't know that I agree that it will diminish California's influence nationwide. I mean, we're the fourth largest economy on the planet, so I do think that is a heavy sword that we kind of can wield here in this country. But that I think has been kind of what people have been talking about. I hope that the Democrats are having a phenomenal night. I mean, it's still very early, but definitely defying history tonight. I mean, historically, it should have been what they were talking about, a red wave or a bit of a bloodbath, and that's not what we're seeing tonight at all. We're barely seeing a red ripple. So still very early in terms of, we know these elections can go on for days and weeks sometimes, but a good night for the Democrats, definitely breaking history. Historically, of course, a new president's party losing an incredible amount of seats. We're not seeing that tonight.
Yeah, Jonathan, you mentioned California having the fourth largest economy in the world, but not being able to handle the homeless crisis. So let's bring in Doug and talk about that. I always wanted to ask a Republican, Doug, how should Republicans handle the homeless crisis differently than it's being handled now?
I think this is actually pretty simple, if I may, and that is until you deal with the mental illness and the drug addiction issues on a compulsory treatment basis, you're never going to give these people who are living in our streets a chance to enjoy the American dream. We have to change the law to do that. Now, I want to go back to your first question about what does the Republican or what does this election portend. I think we're going to see the House of Representatives have about 220 to 222 Republicans, so a very narrow majority. I think that the Senate will still be 51-49 one way or the other, and I think we're going to have divided government. We're going to see a lot more compromise going forward. You won't see these jam down bills like the Build Back Better was and some of these others. I think that'll be good for the country. I think President Biden is a very skilled politician and knows how this works, and I think we will see progress.
Let's talk about what motivated voters to really get out there and vote either today or send in their ballots. Do you think it was more the California sort of centric issues like homelessness or drought and water supply for farmers that were the final motivating factors to get people to the polls this year, or is it really those larger national issues, most notably inflation?
I think different pools of voters vote for different reasons, and a candidate has to put together a coalition of these pots, if you will, of different voters in order to be successful. In my universe, people are very focused on the price of gas and the price of food and the ability to have a safe neighborhood. In my daughter's neighborhood, it's all about homeless people who are disrupting their ability to enjoy the peace and quiet. So again, you have to put these pools together to create a winning coalition. And I think some people did that more effectively than others.
Jonathan, let me sneak in a question about young voters. How do we get young people to the polls? How do we get them care enough to vote?
Well, from a Democratic perspective, I think one of the challenges that the Democratic Party has, and will always probably have, is that it is a big tent party. So instead of focusing on kind of a narrow group with kind of a more specific, few issues that they can go to, they're a much larger group. So they're appealing to a range of voters, young and old, black and white, Hispanic, women and men's issues. So they have a bigger challenge ahead of them because they are trying to appeal to a much larger group of people. I think when it comes down to young people, one of the challenges, honestly, for the Democrats is that young people, particularly millennials and Gen Z, want to see new blood in the party. And that kind of runs directly in contrast with what some of the older voters, that maybe the baby boomer voters, want to see, which is they want to see experienced faces like, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So I think there is a bit of a challenge for the Democrats in terms of wanting to appeal to young voters with a new blood for the party, maybe like an AOC. And we all know that when AOC came in, one of the first things she was doing was targeting Nancy Pelosi. So I think that's a challenge for Democrats as a big tent party, kind of trying to appeal to all the groups that they want to appeal to, whereas I think Republicans are able to kind of really, and you can call it the Electoral College, you can call it gerrymandering, it's probably all of those, but they're able to appeal to kind of rural Americans, a very kind of specific targeted demographic, and the issues that pertain to those specific groups of people, and they don't have as much of a challenge as Democrats have in that area.
All right, Jonathan, we'll have to leave it at that. Jonathan and Doug, thank you both for your time.
Always